Donald Trump's presidency is once again dominating headlines across the United States and around the world. But this time, Trump is facing challenges on multiple fronts: foreign policy, the economy, the courts, the Federal Reserve, immigration, and the media are all creating major pressure around his administration. One of the biggest issues right now is Iran. The conflict between the United States and Iran has become one of the most important foreign policy challenges of Trump's presidency. Trump has said he believes the conflict could end relatively soon, but the situation remains complicated. Reports indicate that the United States has used a significant portion of its long-range precision missile stockpile during the conflict. That has raised questions about America's military readiness and how long the United States can sustain a major operation. The Trump administration has pushed back against claims that America is running out of ammunition. Officials have emphasized that the United States still has large amounts of military equipment available, and that weapons production is being increased. But modern warfare is not simply about how many weapons a country has. Different weapons are designed for different missions. So even when an overall military stockpile remains large, shortages in specific categories can still create strategic pressure. Trump has suggested that the Iran conflict could be coming to an end soon. But reaching a final agreement with Iran will not be easy. If the conflict continues for much longer, it could put additional pressure on America's military resources and create political problems for the administration. And that is why Iran has become one of the biggest tests of Donald Trump's presidency. The Iran conflict has also raised another important question: how prepared is the United States to handle a prolonged military confrontation? Reports about American weapons stockpiles have created concern in Washington. Trump has also expressed concern about sensitive military information being leaked to the public. The administration argues that national security information must be protected, because revealing sensitive military details could give America's opponents valuable information. Critics, however, argue that the American public also deserves to understand the consequences of a prolonged conflict. This debate highlights something important about Trump's leadership style. Trump has generally favored strong pressure and quick decisions. His foreign policy strategy often combines military pressure with the possibility of negotiations. That approach is also visible in the Iran conflict. Trump has maintained pressure on Tehran while leaving the door open to diplomacy. But Iran has its own strategic advantages. One of the most important is the Strait of Hormuz, a critical route for global energy supplies. If instability around the strait increases, the consequences could extend far beyond the United States and Iran. Oil prices, shipping costs, inflation, and global trade could all be affected. That puts Trump in a difficult position. He wants to maintain maximum pressure on Iran without allowing the conflict to become an open-ended war. If Trump succeeds in reaching an agreement, it could become one of the biggest foreign policy victories of his presidency. But if the conflict continues, military resources and political pressure could become increasingly difficult problems for the administration. While foreign policy remains a major issue, Trump is also pushing an aggressive economic agenda. His America First strategy is particularly visible in trade policy. The Trump administration has increasingly relied on tariffs to protect American industries and reduce dependence on foreign suppliers. One recent target is polysilicon and its derivatives. Polysilicon is an important material used in solar panels and semiconductor-related supply chains. The administration argues that the United States should strengthen domestic production of strategically important materials instead of depending too heavily on foreign countries. That is the basic idea behind Trump's trade strategy. If America relies too heavily on foreign suppliers for critical products, the administration believes that could become an economic and national security risk. But tariffs also have critics. When imported products become more expensive, American companies that rely on those imports can face higher costs. And when businesses face higher costs, consumers can eventually feel the impact through higher prices. Trump supporters argue that short-term costs may be worth paying if tariffs help rebuild American manufacturing. Critics argue that excessive tariffs can increase prices, create uncertainty for businesses, and trigger trade tensions with other countries. China remains a major part of this strategy. Trump's administration views China not only as an economic competitor, but also as a strategic competitor. The goal is to reduce America's dependence on China, while encouraging more production inside the United States. The big question is whether Trump's tariff strategy will actually strengthen American manufacturing without putting too much pressure on consumers and businesses. That answer could have a major impact on the American economy. Another major battle surrounding Donald Trump involves the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve plays a critical role in the American economy. It influences interest rates, inflation, employment conditions, and overall financial stability. Trump has repeatedly pushed for lower interest rates. His argument is that lower rates could support economic growth and reduce borrowing costs. But the Federal Reserve is designed to operate independently from the White House. That independence is important because monetary policy decisions are supposed to be based on economic conditions rather than political pressure. The conflict between the Trump administration and Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook has therefore attracted significant attention. The administration has attempted to remove Cook and raised allegations involving mortgage-related matters. Cook has rejected the allegations. The dispute has moved into the courts and has raised a much larger constitutional question. How much power should a president have over an independent Federal Reserve? For financial markets, this is extremely important. Investors want to know that monetary policy will remain stable and independent. If markets begin to believe that interest rate decisions are being influenced directly by political pressure, uncertainty could increase. Trump, meanwhile, continues to argue that the economy would benefit from lower rates. The Federal Reserve has a different responsibility. Its job is to balance economic growth, inflation, employment, and financial stability. That is why the Trump Federal Reserve dispute is much bigger than a disagreement between two political figures. It could become a major debate over the future of America's economic system. Trump's domestic agenda is also facing major legal battles. One of the biggest examples is birthright citizenship. The Trump administration has attempted to restrict birthright citizenship in the United States. Trump argues that the current immigration system can be abused and that America needs stronger immigration rules. Opponents argue that birthright citizenship is connected to the 14th Amendment and cannot simply be eliminated through executive action. That has turned the issue into a major constitutional battle, and it demonstrates a larger pattern surrounding Trump's presidency. Trump wants to use executive power to move quickly on his policy agenda. Opponents often respond by taking those actions to court. If a court blocks an administration policy, the White House can appeal. Eventually, some of these cases can reach the Supreme Court. Another example is Trump's proposed White House ballroom project, estimated at around $400 million. The project has faced legal opposition, with a court blocking construction. The administration has challenged the decision. Trump argues that the president should have significant authority to modernize the White House and create better facilities for official events. Opponents argue that the White House is not simply a private residence belonging to whoever occupies the Oval Office. It is one of America's most important historic properties. That means major structural changes should follow appropriate legal procedures. Donald Trump's long-running conflict with the media is also back in the spotlight. Trump has filed a lawsuit against the BBC seeking approximately $10 billion. The case is connected to a BBC documentary involving the editing of Trump's January 6 speech. Trump argues that the documentary presented his words in a misleading way. The BBC apologized for the editing, but has rejected Trump's broader legal claims. The case has now moved into questions involving evidence, damages, and financial information. It also reflects the much larger relationship between Trump and the mainstream media. Trump has repeatedly accused major media organizations of unfair and biased coverage. His supporters see his attacks on the media as an attempt to hold powerful organizations accountable. His critics argue that government officials should not pressure independent journalism. The debate also connects to Trump's broader relationship with the Federal Communications Commission and major broadcasters. So when we look at all of these stories together, a clear pattern emerges. Iran, tariffs, the Federal Reserve, immigration, the courts, the White House, and the media. Donald Trump is pushing his America First agenda aggressively across almost every major area of government. Supporters see this as decisive leadership. Critics see it as an expansion of presidential power that could create serious risks for America's institutions. But the final results are still uncertain. The biggest questions now are whether Trump can bring the Iran conflict to an end, whether his tariff strategy can strengthen the American economy, how far his battle with the Federal Reserve will go, and whether his controversial executive actions can survive legal challenges. One thing, however, is almost certain. The headlines surrounding Donald Trump are not going away. His decisions are no longer affecting only Washington. They can influence global markets, international relations, energy prices, trade, and geopolitics.